Hey guys, Addict Cyclist here with a video today to discuss the Specialized Epic brain system. So this is a 2019 Epic Expert. Obviously there's some upgrades, S-Works bars, SRAM XO carbon crankset, got some upgraded Reynolds Trail XC wheels, S-Works C-post, S-Works saddle. But anyway, so I'm going to use this time to discuss the brain system. So if you're searching this video, you've obviously seems like you have some questions about the brain, so I figured use today's platform to kind of dig in here. So the Specialized Epic is a rocket ship of a XC bike. So, you know, there are other XC bikes in the market that are also fantastic. You got the Orbea Ois, you got the Trek Super Caliber, you've got the Cannondale Scalpel, you've got the Canyon Lux, to name pretty much the few top. But what sets the Epic out from the crowd is the Specialized Proprietary brain. So let's kind of dig in here. So the brain offers a efficient pedaling platform, basically mirroring when the brain fade is in full firm to the likes of a hardtail. So there's basically zero pedal bob when it's in its full firm setting, which we'll take a look in a minute. And the fork on this bottom adjust brain fade is basically a rigid. There's basically no movement. There's no sag unless you start kind of opening the brain fade up. So it acts as like a complete scalpel, razor blade on the trails. I mean, literally, you point the front tire, it shoots. It's super efficient. Yeah, it could be a little rough on the neck, the shoulders, and maybe the back. But you kind of get to learn the bike and what, you know, how many clicks you want to be and what trail system. So I keep a little book and where am I riding today and what is the most efficient yet forgiving brain setting of the 5 clicks, or in this case the fork in this model here is 24 clicks. So we'll kind of dig into that. So what Specialized has created is in this brain 2.0, on this version, I believe the 2.0 brains were on the 2017 to 2020, is you'll see here the brain, which houses the micro brain, which houses a brass inertia valve, and basically it closes the ports to the damper. So when you are riding and there's movement from underneath the bike, right? So some hits from underneath, not rider input on top, the valve will bounce on its axis with the spring and allow the oil flow to flow all the way up the seat stay into the yoke, which has a port in it, proprietary yoke, obviously into the shock and the damper. This rear brain, just like the new brains that were produced for the 2021-22 model, have a fade, so it has 5 clicks, so you can obviously keep it firm or soft. So I keep it on firm, as basically it's a hardtail, we'll call it hardtail light or hardtail with a blow off. So super efficient, no pedal bob. This thing tracks like a razor blade, and I couldn't be more happy with its performance in the trail system and the trails that I have access to here in New Jersey. So again, not too rocky, pretty flat. It does have some elevations, but nothing that this bike, you know, gets hung up on. So what's nice with this version here, and they don't do this with the new ones, is you would set this PSI to 300 PSI. You would sit on it, and basically you would undo this auto sag cap and literally just press it, let the air out, and the brain sets to your weight, and it's 100% perfect every single time. The new brains, you actually have to base the air pressure on your body weight. So the brain and the fork, different story. So excuse the background noise. We have a military base here and there's a helicopter coming through. So this brain on this 2019 model, so the 2019s or 2017, 18, 19, and 20s have a different style brain. They did make some adjustments for 2021 and 2022, but this expert level has a rebound on top and the brain fade on the bottom. So the Pro and the S-Works has a 5-click brain fade on the top with nothing on the bottom. So what I found is, from just comparing some of my friends' bikes, that although this maybe not the higher end fork, I do enjoy this fork better than the top mount brain fade, because this fork, when it's in full brain firm, there is almost no play. It's almost a rigid front end. I mean, you can see where the sag is now. I put the O-ring all the way down. And when you press on this thing, there's no movement whatsoever. There's no movement. So when you're on the trails, I mean, this thing's super efficient. Again, it's like a rigid. This is basically all it moved with putting all my body weight on it. So basically 10%. 10%. So you can call that a little bit of small bump compliance. So basically, this bike is extremely nimble, extremely fast, extremely, almost near perfect. But what makes the new brain different is the fact that they added a small bump compliance, and I believe the sag sits at about 15 to 20% in its range. And comparing this fork to the World Cup version or the new Sid SL Ultimate is that the new Sids, they're kind of mushy on top. They don't offer this firm feeling in this brain fade. So even when it's in full brain or full firm, it has a lot of play in the fork. So when you stand up, the fork has taken on a lot of rider input, where in this one it's literally like a rigid. So as much as this fork is not as high end as the new ones, I actually prefer how this fork functions overall, because I think it's more efficient. You've been finding that, you know, some of the new builds that you see, their GC Performance or other builds online, you'll see that once in a while a customer will prefer the brain damper to be removed, put in a race day charger damper with a remote for a lockout. Because again, when you stand up on the new Sids, there's bob, even in full firm. They're not like this older version brain. So when you go online and you search this, you'll find a couple videos out there where the older versions seem to perform true to the brain, opposed to having, you know, a lot more, call it mush and take up, you know, on the top end, or in this case from rider input. So these are little things to know about when you're looking at this bike. You know, I made this video because, you know, there's not a lot of videos about the brain, and it's an important thing because that's what makes this bike different than most. You can see how clean the cockpit is. There's no cables, there's no levers to pull to lock out like the Scott or like the Orbea. Again, those bikes are fantastic in their own right. I think their design at the Squid Lock and the Twin Lock are absolutely genius and offer something very unique to the market. Recently, Giant had introduced the Fox Live Valve on its new Anthem, so a far better or superior in technology terms, because it's using technology to run the dampers. But this we'll call it analog version here on the Specialized seems to just work. There's a couple videos that were that had reviews done on them, and a couple of the written articles that everybody that reviewed the new Anthem had issues where the live valve just stopped working. So in that case, the live valve automatically flicks the dampers open, and you have a full suspension bike with no active suspension. What makes the live valve unique is that basically it's as fast as 3 milliseconds in terms of opening and closing the dampers. It has sensors in the front and rear of the bike to understand where the bike is basically kind of positioned on the trail, whether you're going downhill, whether you're going uphill. I believe it's called a barometer, and it automatically adjusts on where the brain, or in this case, where the damper should be set or locked or open. So a very unique system. I think it's the next generation of maybe what the brain could be going down the road. But again, this, we'll call it an analog version, just seems to work with the little bit of finickiness of the fork brain. So I just wanted to use this again today to kind of just talk through this. You know, I love some feedback, some dialogue with some of my viewers or subscribers to get an understanding about, you know, why you like this bike, or why you didn't like this bike, or maybe why you chose the Epic Evo, both the older version that had the brain in the rear and then obviously a non-brain in the front, or if you chose the new Epic Evo where there's no brains at all coming from this bike. But I think, you know, just having an open dialogue to allow, you know, people to understand of, you know, what made their decision over the other would be very helpful. So I appreciate the views. I appreciate the likes. I ask you to please subscribe, as it helps me kind of stay motivated and engaged. And I ask you to please go back and look at some of the content on the channel. I think you might find it valuable. I don't go into super spec. I kind of tell it how it is. you know, I have nothing basically written down. Everything is improv and you know, spoken from the heart and kind of shooting from the hip. And I think that will, you know, that kind of sets me apart from maybe some others. I'm definitely not paid advertiser. But yeah, so again, appreciate the views, the likes, the subscriptions, and yeah, be well. Appreciate it. Thanks.